few months back, I reviewed an old Titanic adventure game that was made on PC in the 90s. I enjoyed it, even though it had a few issues with getting a perfect ending. At least, I felt it had a few issues, but it was probably just me. In any case, I found out through my friend Jairus, who just so happens to be a Titanic nut, that there was also a game released on the Wii called Hidden Mysteries Titanic. Or just Titanic, as I think the Hidden Mysteries was probably more of a series name or subtitle or something. Or maybe it really is supposed to be Hidden Mysteries Titanic, with the Titanic part as a subtitle. I know, I'm rambling, and it's because I'm tired and decided to write this review anyway. What can I say, I felt creative at the time. In any case, if you don't know anything about the Titanic, I'll sum it up for you quickly. It's a massive cruise ship that was created, hit an iceberg, and sank. The end. You can watch a stupid movie if you want a bunch of bullshit, but I'd pass. Then again, I never cared for the movie to begin with. Okay, on to the game. This one is another adventure game of the point-and-click variety, but even more so than the PC game. The PC game had you talking to other people to further along a heinous plot, but in the Wii game here, you play as a Margaret Ashley, a newlywed woman to a man named Robert Ashley. They are heading to New York City to start a new life, and the game actually starts outside of the Titanic, as Margaret can't find her boarding pass. The game takes place in chapters, and each chapter has its own little story to tell and the way to progress. For example, the first chapter focuses on Margaret finding that pass so she can actually get on the doomed ship. During this first chapter, you'll meet most of the supporting cast. You have Margaret's alcoholic husband, Robert. You have her possessive mother. You have a troublesome young boy named George. There's Montague, the family's butler. You also meet up with some of the ship's crew. There's only about 2 or 3 members of the Titanic's crew that you encounter, which feels a bit light. Come to think of it, there's barely any interaction with any of the riders of the ship. It's a bit disappointing. I understand that this would be a much larger undertaking to make the ship look full, but this is now 2 Titanic games I've played where the cruise liner looks like a ghost ship. So, what kind of story do you deal with, other than the ship sinking? Well, there really isn't much of one. Each chapter has Margaret figuring something out. As I said, the first has her getting her boarding pass. The second involves her going through a hidden door, as she's literally just exploring because she doesn't feel like eating with her new husband. In the third, you have to get out of the hidden compartment of the ship. You have the responsibility of getting Robert's seasickness medicine. You have to persuade him that the ship is flooding in its lower compartments. Sadly, there's not much of any fun plot until the very end when you're just trying to get off the ship. That's when the game finally gets interesting. Until then, it's just a matter of messing around with any object that you can pick up and solving obtuse puzzles with them. Some puzzles make a bit of sense, like putting salt in boiling water to bring the eggs to the top. But others, like throwing a freaking cat with a collar of bells out of a window into the next cabin to wake up Robert. That's just a plain what the hell moment. I guess that's why you're a standard adventure game. It's not qualified as average unless it has the kind of puzzles that really make you think outside the box. And by outside the box, I mean the box is on a completely different continent than you. That's how far outside you need to be for these puzzles. So yeah, the story sucks, which can be a bit disheartening, since story is supposed to be the heavy part of every good adventure game. But surely things could pick up, right? Well, let's move on to the graphics. Usually, I just say a small blurb about them at the end of the review, but this one's going to be a little different because there's a few things to mention. First, every scene is a static room, with only a very small amount of room showing any sort of animation. Your character stands still, not moving an inch, which is actually a bit creepy when you realize they're staring at you. The player, without blinking. You walk away, you come back, and BAM! They're still eye-humping you. Some of the characters are drawn decent enough, but what the hell is up with the cat? This has to be the sorriest excuse of a cat I've seen in a long time. It just looks like a stuffed animal. It's ugly. I love cats, but I would not want to own this one. And the fact that she throws it out the effing window? I guess we know how Margaret feels about it. Someone called the SPCA on her. There is some animation in some parts of the game, mainly water. This looks okay. At one point, you come across an Indian fortune teller who is trapped behind some burning beams. He recommends that you find some help to free him. But, of course, this being an adventure game, Margaret just says, nope, I got this. So she goes through a bunch of puzzles that probably take longer to complete than to yell for help outside of the hospital room. That's right, you're outside the hospital room. Not lying here. And wouldn't you think that they'd have some sort of a splint or something for his leg right in there? Nah. Instead, you just use a frickin' foldable wine rack and fake ivy. I swear, adventure games confuse me with their logic. But yeah, the fire isn't the best I've ever seen, but I guess it's also not the worst. And how about the voice acting? For most of the characters, that's pretty well done. It has a higher quality of most budget titles I've ever played, so that's a good thing. But of course it's not perfect. Margaret's mother can be hit or miss depending on the line being delivered. But worst of all is the Indian guy. His accent sounds forced, and I would be sincerely surprised if an Indian man actually voiced him. I could load up the game and actually view the credits, but that would require me to turn around, wheel myself to my bookcase, find the Titanic case, pop it open, grab the CD, turn the Wii U on, navigate to the Wii menu, insert the disc, wait for the damn thing to load, turn on my recorder, wait for that to load, then click credits. Huh. That sounds like a chapter in a simple adventure game. Speaking of puzzles, there's one thing I still don't understand. In an earlier part of the game, you get asked by the ship's curator, Odette, to help her out with some sort of card game that rotates around a pocket watch. You have a few stacks of cards on each side, along with the king's lead in each direction of the watch. This pocket watch goes to a random time, and you're supposed to figure out what to do. I had to keep playing with it until the game let me proceed. At first, I thought I knew what I was doing, but then I found out it was just plain luck. Sure, you do get access to a hint option, but that doesn't explain puzzles to you. There's also a skip puzzle option, but I think you only get so many uses of that, so I opted to save them for more necessary ones, because I figured end of game ones would be a lot more difficult. Truth be told, I never used it once. You should be proud of me. In addition to your standard puzzles, you do have several instances of hidden object scenarios. These are fairly simple, having you to find 10 of the specific item in the scene. Once this is done, the objects you are finding become an item in your inventory, and will need to be used somewhere. There are some other technical problems with the game. I did find a typo early on when you're trying to use a crank. The game tells you to perform in action. And this is the first chapter, so I was a bit worried about the rest of the game. But thankfully, that's all I found for typos. In addition, one of the later puzzles has you smashing a dumbwaiter on an Egyptian urn that's supposedly indestructible. I actually glitched the dumbwaiter. You have to put a bag of potatoes on it to give it more weight, but it won't let you if the dumbwaiter isn't at the top. Yet it was bugged and didn't seem to understand what phase of the puzzle I was on and where the dumbwaiter was, so I had to quit the game and reload. That's strange. I will say that the best part of the game is the accurate portrayal of the ship. I'm really glad for this, since I've always been intrigued by the design of the ship. You don't get as much of a free gander at the ship like a PC game, but you do see enough to get a gist of the Titanic's design. It's a shame that it just feels so restricted. Although there's no replay value whatsoever other than a few different endings that change based on your decisions in the game, you do unlock a special bonus chapter at the end of the game that allows you to talk to the captain, who goes over some of the more drastic mistakes that were made on the fateful journey. This is actually the best chapter in my opinion, and I wonder why not more was done with these short scenes. And oddly enough, there's not a lot of brainpower needed for these bonus segments. It's a shame really. There was a lot of potential here that just feels unused. Hidden Mysteries Titanic isn't a bad game, but I won't go out on a limb and say it's great either. It's kind of mediocre and just plain bland at times. It's interesting to see how the developers implemented the Wiimote, such as turning cranks or striking objects, although the main use of it is just to act like a mouse pointer. Some of the puzzles may make you think a bit, but I think most adventure game players won't mind that. If you have a Wii, I'd say rent this one if possible, especially if you enjoy anything about the Titanic. Or, even better, look to get it cheap. Jared's only got it for I think $5 and he said he wouldn't pay a dime more. I tend to agree with that statement. Final score? 6 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.